And the one thing that I tell people, first of all, do not pledge allegiance to a tech tool. Like, use what is going to solve your problem.
Hello there, and welcome to today's episode of the Easy EdTech Podcast. My name is Monica Burns, and I am so glad that you're here to join me today. If you want to make the most of education technology, aka EdTech, well, you are in the right place. My goal has always been to help make EdTech easier and give you ideas you can try yourself, share with a colleague, or bookmark for later in the school year. Every Tuesday here on the Easy EdTech Podcast, you'll hear stories from my time in the classroom, the work I do now with schools and districts, and my travels to different EdTech events. Get ready for solo episodes where I share some quick tips and stories, and interviews full of practical ideas and stories from new guests each month. If we mention something you'd like to check out, make sure to click the link. You'll find it in the episode description or the summary area where you're listening to this podcast, or you can find every episode and all of the resources we mention by going to classtechtips.com/podcast, or by going to classtechtips.com and just clicking on the Easy EdTech Podcast button at the top of the page. This episode is sponsored by my mini course, Learn ChatGPT This Summer, which is available to all members of my AI and Education membership. Join today and stay for 1 month, the whole school year, or however long you like. You'll get instant access to my mini course, Learn ChatGPT This Summer, with 6 short videos. It's built into my AI and Education membership, so you'll get all the member perks too, like a new video update each month and plenty more to explore. Go to my website, classtechtips.com/AI, to find the link to the membership. That's classtechtips.com/AI for all of the details. This week's episode is titled Favorite Google Tools and Tips for Educators with Dr. Desiree Alexander. And it was lots of fun chatting with Desiree today. Although we've known each other for several years and I've always been a fan of her work, I had the chance to sit in the back of one of her sessions at the TCEA conference in Austin this past February. Her session was all about Googly tools, so I reached out and asked if she would join for an episode of the podcast to chat about just that, favorite Google tools and tips for educators. Let's dive into the conversation. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to chat all things Googly tools and tips with you today. But before we dive into all of that, can you share with listeners a bit about your role in education? What does your day-to-day look like?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me. I am so excited to be here. I don't have a day-to-day, which is very odd for someone who is type A and who is a homebody and all those kind of things. Like, I usually don't want to be that flexible, but I don't have a day-to-day. It really depends on the day, where I am in the world and what I'm doing. So I am the founder CEO of Educator Alexander Consulting. I'm also the Deputy Director for the Associated Professional Educators of Louisiana, which is an educational nonprofit. And then I'm also the Executive Director for the Transformative Educational Leadership program. It's a program in Louisiana to certify educational leaders. So it really just depends on the day, what I'm working on, who I'm working with, and I absolutely love it.
I'm with you, right? A little bit of all the things, right? Just trying out, right, different things with different people, working with lots of different groups. So I'm pumped to have you on today to chat about, what you're seeing in your different roles, the kind of things that you're hearing from other educators. And today we're talking about favorite Google tools. I got to sneak in the back of one of your sessions at the TCEA conference in Texas earlier this year, and you were showing off some things that were new to me or I hadn't seen special features of. And Google, of course, has a wide range of tools. I'm looking at Google Docs on one corner of my screen for our notes and questions today. So, what are some of your top go-to Google tools that every educator should know about?
Absolutely. I am old school Google. Like, I like my workspace tools. I know all the fancy things that come out, but
Yeah.
I always tell people I like my old school Google. So my number one tool that I use almost every single day is Google Forms. So I know it's not new, it's not fancy, but I love Google Forms, and of course, Google Sheets plays right along with that. So I really do like my Google Workspace tools. They're the tried and true, they're adding on to it with Google Viz, and, we're adding on to, but I just like my tried and true tools. I really do.
Yeah, and I think especially for the flexibility they provide, I'm a big Google Forms person too. I used to use it when it was like, just for me, at least, I was only using it for me to use the form, like a digital checklist where I would just submit, right? And gather some ideas, right? Or data when I was in a classroom setting. Of course, many people have probably filled out a Google form if they haven't created one themselves. So just lots of ways to use these tools that have become, such a core part of so many workflows, so many different use cases.
Yes.
For educators who are new to using Google tools, what's an easy entry point to start integrating them into their daily routines?
I would say look at what you're using now. So if you're a Microsoft user, if you're using, the plethora of other tools that you can use for data entry and, to write and things like that, and see where you can start substituting. That's what I always say. So if you love, Microsoft Word, then look at Google Docs, see what you can do in the Google Docs, see where you can where it translates, where it doesn't translate. And the one thing that I tell people, first of all, do not pledge allegiance to a tech tool. Like, use what is going to solve your problem. So that's number one. And then number two, if you are looking and you see like, oh, I hate that, Google Docs doesn't have blah, blah, blah. I hate that Google Slides doesn't have, ask, Google it, go to YouTube, because it probably does have it. It's just not called the same thing, and it's not where you're used to having it. So that's what made me, I was a big Microsoft user, and I still use Microsoft. Yeah. But, I had to be open. I had to be open to learning something new. And now I use Google more than Microsoft. So you have to just be open to saying, okay, well, let me use this tool, especially if your district goes to that and you're just really distraught because you don't want to use it. We've all been there with a plethora of different tech tools, but just be open, and just start small. Yeah. Start small, looking at, hey, where does this translate to the tool that I was using before? Oh, I was using Outlook before. I love Outlook. Now I have to use Gmail. Okay, well, where are the similarities? Start getting used to it. I think that's a good place to start. Don't go crazy. Don't try to use every tool that you have available in Google. You're never going to be able to do that anyway because there's so many, but just start small and comfortable, and then start pushing yourself a little bit out of your comfort zone.
I love that emphasis on finding a connection, between maybe something you've done in the past. I know I find myself sometime, even I'm not an anti-spreadsheet person by any means. I just don't spend a crazy amount of time in spreadsheets in general. So when I am in Google Sheets and I have one of those like, I bet I can do this moments, or I used to do this in high school with Excel, right? Or with Excel. Like, so I'm sure there's a way to do it, right? Just even doing that search to say like, what is the equivalent formula, right? That I'm going to pop in, because I know I've done this 20 years ago in Excel. So like, it must be doable now if I'm in this other tool. So I love that reminder for someone who might be starting off or building confidence within these spaces. So, one thing that comes up in conversation sometimes when I share a tool with someone, maybe it's been around for a while, but they haven't seen that one before, just not in their tool belt, not in their workflow. Are there any lesser known Google features or tools that you think more teachers should be using, that if they knew about it, they would put it into their regular practice?
Absolutely. Now, I know, AI is very hot and popular and all that good stuff. And it's really hot and popular for a reason. So one of my new tools that I'm starting to use more and more and more is Notebook LM. So Notebook LM allows you, it's AI, so you can ask it questions and all that kind of stuff, but it allows you to put in your own resources.
Yeah.
And for me, that was just kind of revolutionary on top of the revolutionary, right? I was like, okay, wait, hold on. So I recently did one for a law that is going to be passed in Louisiana. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to read the 125-page law. I'm just not. So I put it into Notebook LM and I put in kind of a bipartisan view of it. I put that into and, I got a podcast that I can listen to, these two people going back and forth about the things in the law, the positive and the negative. And then I was able to ask a question about it. So, I mean, to me, that is like, where has that been all my life? Like, how am I living without that? Right.
Yeah.
So that if I have to say, like, what's my new shiny tool that I think is going to be incorporated into my life, and I think other people should at least look at, is Notebook LM. And Gemini is awesome. And I feel like all the other tools are, but Notebook LM is it's like my Google Forms. Like, it caught my attention. And now I'm like, okay, I think this is going to be a regular tool that I throw things into, have it, quickly and accurately, because I'm throwing in the tools, accurately give me that information back. I think that's my new shiny right now.
And that's great, for someone who maybe has spent some time in these tools, is curious about, the AI of it all, has explored, Gemini, but maybe hasn't seen this extra piece, right? This Notebook LM, where you are in a little bit more of the driver's seat to say, like, only use this as your source, only use this as your reference material. And that example that you gave of a recent bill, a law, something that might be a lot to digest, whether it's for us or even for students, right? It could be a good model for how to interact with text in different parts of our lives, like a very authentic example. So I appreciate that. I know when I show off Notebook LM to groups, just this week I was sharing with a group and I had uploaded just a chunk of the first chapter of one of my books, right? And so it's very, very focused. I've done it with menus from restaurants, right? Just there's the silly examples, the practical examples. And I love that one that someone might tie to a civic engagement, right? That you mentioned.
Absolutely.
So, Notebook LM is newer, but there's also older tools that are not accessible anymore. Google Jamboard is one that was discontinued, right? In the sense that we're just not able to access, right? This tool that was very popular, particularly during emergency remote learning environments. So with that tool, this whiteboard tool, right, what are some alternatives or workarounds for educators who loved using it? I'm sure you've heard from people about this.
Oh, yes, I have. I was never a Jamboard user, but I was a Jamboard teacher. So RIP Jamboard, but I always just like to use a Google slide. But I got it. I did understand. I'm also middle schooling up. So I did understand the purpose and the simplicity of Jamboard. I don't know of a tool that's going to have that simplicity right now, but some of the ones that I've been kind of looking at, one is actually Canva. So Canva has a whiteboard feature. It has Post-its or sticky notes that you can use. And I just saw an article that came out that said you can actually, what I want to say, you can filter and organize your sticky notes by certain criteria, like by color or, content. You can actually say, put all my yellow sticky notes together and start organizing yourself. So I think that's really, really cool. The other one that I suggest to people, just because it's the only one that I played with a lot, I actually was going to do some instructional videos for them and things like that, is Fig Jam. So that's the one that I kind of lead people to more than anything else. now is not as simplistic. So you
Right.
can do a lot of things with FigJam. So it's not as simplistic as the Jamboard was. Miro is another one that I've looked at. Again, not as simplistic. So I haven't found anything yet that was just as simplistic and got to the point
Yes.
like Jamboard did. So that's the thing. Like all these other tools can just do a bunch of other stuff. So Jamboard going away made me even appreciate Jamboard more because I'm like, okay, I get it. I get like we don't have anything as simplistic.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think that's been my pain point I've heard from people too, right? Like just the simplicity. There's some great tools that are a bit more dynamic. You could imagine some secondary connections like you alluded to, but for just those kind of quick moments, particularly in an elementary classroom, I do think Canvas Whiteboard's pretty nice, right? I do like FigJam and all the features, but it's kind of like choosing the one that's right for your specific group as opposed to kind of that easy catch-all. So, I appreciate.
I mean, you can even put Padlet on that list. It's not, so many tools you can use, but they also do other things. Where Jamboard, that's all it did. Like, that was it. It was just a whiteboard. Like, you can type on it, you can put a sticky note, but that was it. Like, that was all it did. If you wanted something else, you have to go to a different Google product. And I think that's what people really loved about it.
Yeah, right. There's always that just kind of pull to want, like, give me more features, make this more of this. But sometimes it's those things that are just silly and simple, wildly simple that end up being the things that we use the most or we miss the most, right?
Yes.
But I appreciate you making those connections to some other popular tools because sometimes it is just about, transferring experiences into another tool, like using some of that muscle memory for which buttons to press or what something should be able to do. So, as we think about some of these tools that maybe have some of those overlapping features or similar interfaces, chatbots, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, right? These are ones that sometimes feel interchangeable because you can do a lot of the same things. And I'm curious, what's your take on Gemini and its potential for educators? Have you seen any creative uses for it from a teaching and learning perspective?
I think Gemini is awesome. I actually use it. I'm starting to use it more and more. I'm kind of like a late bloomer in the AI space because I was like, this is awesome, but I never thought about actually using it for my own productivity. And then, things will come up. I'm like, well, yeah, duh. I can just start using it more and more. I feel like in 2025, actually, I'm starting to use it more and more. But I appreciate Gemini for what it is. I do appreciate some of the security things that Google has put in place behind it, especially Gemini for Education. So I do appreciate that. Creative uses, I haven't really seen any creative uses from the student perspective, besides the things that we already know. Students using it for research and things like that, and using it to help them start paragraphs and start their brainstorming and things like that. But I have seen teachers using it in really unique ways of coming up with policy, coming up with rules and procedures, coming up with lesson plans and lessons, and even coming up with like presentations and things to put in their slides. And so I've seen, really productive things happening on that end. So yeah, I think Gemini absolutely has a place. One of the things with AI that, I keep preaching is I know we can turn it off or, leave it on, and we kind of feel like we're in the Wild Wild West sometimes.
Yeah.
And we have to, just like anything else, just like when we first got computers, just like when we first got computers in our pockets, just like, all those things. And I'm grateful enough to have lived through all of that. Is we have to teach them how to use it responsibly. It's the same difference. We have to teach them how to use it responsibly. If not us, who?
Right. And that modeling that we do so much in other tools to show how we would navigate Seesaw, right? Or how we would move through, right? A slide deck tool. It's a similar type of process to those types of experiences, but also to the way we might introduce like a read aloud or a math problem where we're thinking aloud, right? What kind of prompt would I use here? How would I refine the prompt? And that might not be where everyone's at, right, in their AI journey or having that level of transparency and introducing tools to students. But if you have used some things for instructional planning and you're considering that, that modeling, right, is
Yes.
huge. And so,
Yes.
when I attended your session a few months ago and was exploring some of the newer things inside of Google that really caught my attention. I'm curious from your perspective, kind of your insider perspective there, what's maybe one exciting update or feature from Google that you think educators should be keeping an eye on?
I would say, if I'm not talking about my new shining wicked lamb, I would say is absolutely in the Google Workspace for Education Plus realm. The pay Google is kind of what we call it on the streets.
Yes.
On the street. So I think Classroom is blowing up even more. Google Classroom has introduced so many new tools with read along and practice sets and interactive videos. And then if you talk about getting like a Gemini add-on, now you can create lesson plans and create things in Google Classroom. So I mean, it's getting a little insane with all the stuff we can do in Google Classroom. And I tell people, I'm like, Google Classroom used to be like a 30-minute to an hour session. Like you can get through literally everything you can do with it in about 30 minutes to an hour. And now it's like 2 hours plus to get through all of the different things that you can do with it, even without the Gemini add-on. So it's just, if I'm talking about like what's coming out that has me excited and a little trembling too, because again, it just makes it longer and longer and a more expansive tool where it used to be pretty simple is, I would say the new things coming up in Google Classroom.
Well, and that's something too that, I love that you chose that one because people might be in there already, right? They have experienced it a year or 2 or 5 ago, right? But if they haven't been there recently, right, they might not know or appreciate some of these big changes and some of the things that even, you might know about, right, that are coming down the pipeline. So super helpful for listeners who are revisiting some spaces, looking at spaces, with a new lens, or maybe it's the first time, they've opened something up and they're spending some time in there. So
I will say for Google Classroom, even some of the grading things that have come out, like just certain things that people have asked for years and years and years, really, they need to revisit and play with all the buttons.
That's a great point too. There's definitely been, I think this is true of a handful of tools that have been around for, a decade or so. There's been some listening, right, to the user base. So if there's something that you wish that was there, whether you sent a note or not, and maybe you haven't been in a tool in the past 2 or 3 years, it's worth taking a look to see if maybe they've incorporated some of those highly requested features over the past few years. So where can people connect with you? I'm going to link out so everyone can follow along and find you. But if someone's like on the move today when they're listening to this episode, where can people connect with you? Where can they learn more about your work?
If they can get to my website, they can get to everything. So that's educatoralexander.com. So they can get to educatoralexander.com. They can click on subscribe to my newsletter, to subscribe to all my socials. My email address is on there if they need to contact me, or they can click on contact us. All tips and tricks and my YouTube channel and just my book, everything is connected to my website. So educatoralexander.com.
Perfect. Well, I will make sure to link that out so anyone who's listening can find you, and connect with all of your great resources. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
It was so much fun chatting with Desiree today. Let's finish up with a few key points from today's episode. Google Forms remains a top go-to tool for its flexibility and ease of use in education. New users should start with familiar tools and gradually explore Google's ecosystem. Notebook LM is a game changer for organizing and analyzing personal resources with AI. Jamboard simplicity is hard to replace, but Canva and FigJam offer alternatives. Remember, you can find the show notes and full list of resources from this episode, including all of the ways to connect with Dr. Desiree Alexander by heading to classtechtips.com/podcast and finding today's episode, number 313. This episode is sponsored by my mini course, Learn ChatGPT This Summer, which is available to all members of my AI and Education membership. Join today and stay for 1 month, the whole school year, or however long you like. You'll get instant access to my mini course, Learn ChatGPT This Summer, with 6 short videos. It's built into my AI and Education membership, so you'll get all the member perks too, like a new video update each month and plenty more to explore. Go to my website, classtechtips.com/AI, to find the link to the membership. That's classtechtips.com/AI for all of the details. Thank you for listening to this new episode of the Easy EdTech podcast. I love creating new episodes for you each week, but I could use a bit of help spreading the word about the podcast. Can you leave a rating or review on your favorite podcast app? Spotify will let you tap on the stars, and Apple Podcasts will let you tap on the stars and leave a 1 or 2 sentence review. Thank you so much for taking this extra step. It helps other educators find episodes like this one when they're searching for EdTech tips.